All right, let's get into it. When you picture the world's power players, your mind probably doesn't jump to a small nation tucked between Brazil and Argentina. But today, we're talking about Uruguay, a country that is making an absolutely colossal bet on the future.
So in a part of the world that's often known for, let's say, a bit of turbulence, Uruguay really stands out. I mean, it's consistently ranked as Latin America's strongest democracy. It's a place where institutions are solid and power changes hands peacefully. And it's this deep-rooted stability that actually makes its next big move even possible.
But hey, stability doesn't mean standing still. Not at all. Right now, Uruguay is launching a project so massive, it completely dwarfs anything it has ever done before. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar pivot that could literally redefine its entire economy.
And here's the real kicker. They're pouring this record-breaking investment into an industry that's, well, it's still in its infancy around the globe. We're talking green fuels. So the big question, the one we're going to unpack, is why? Why is this quiet, stable nation making such a high-stakes, audacious gamble? Let's break it down.
You see, to really get why Uruguay is making this bold leap into the future, you have to go back and look at its unique political DNA. It all starts with a single, really powerful idea that has shaped this country for more than 100 years.
And that idea is called Batllismo. Honestly, the best way to think about it is as the nation's operating system. Way back in the early 1900s, President José Bachelet Ordóñez built Latin America's very first welfare state. This created this powerful social contract, this core belief that the government has a fundamental duty to protect its people and help guide the economy. This is so baked into the culture that even today, really extreme free market policies are just a political non-starter.
And this timeline just shows you the key moments. It was literally created in 1828 to be a buffer between its giant neighbors, which gave it a legacy of diplomacy right from the start. Then you have the welfare state we just talked about, and, so critically, after a really dark 12-year dictatorship, its return to democracy in 1985 wasn't just a political shift, it was this deep national recommitment to human rights and building consensus.
So how does that stable foundation actually play out today? Well, after the recent 2024 elections, that whole tradition of consensus is really being put to the test. The new government is, you could say, walking a political tightrope.
The new president, Yamandú Orsi from the center-left, won with 52% of the vote. That's a clear mandate for sure, but that 48% for the other side shows you a country that's closely divided. Though, and this is important, it's not bitterly polarized. The real challenge, though, isn't actually in the president's office.
No, it's right here, in the parliament. Just look at the math for a second. The president's coalition has 48 seats. The opposition? They have 49. Neither side has a majority. This means for any law, any budget, President Orsi has to negotiate. He has to compromise. He has to build coalitions, bill by bill. This, right here, is what negotiated governance looks like in the real world.
And if you really want to understand the people of Uruguay, just look at what they voted against. They said no to lowering the retirement age, which signals they get the need for fiscal responsibility. But they also said a firm no to giving police new powers for nighttime raids, which shows this incredibly deep, almost sacred respect for civil liberties. So they're cautious, they're pragmatic, and they are fiercely protective of their right.
Okay, so what do we got? A stable, consensus-driven country with a new government that has to negotiate basically everything. It's against this backdrop that the economy is going through a quiet but absolutely massive transformation.
For literally centuries, Uruguay was famous for one thing: beef. Its whole identity, its economy, it was built on cattle. But look at this. In 2024, for the very first time, that changed. Thanks to huge investments in forestry, cellulose pulp, the raw material for paper, is now the #1 export. It actually overtook the iconic steak. And that's not the only engine revving up. There's a second one roaring to life: technology. Uruguay is now exporting $1 billion a year in software and IT services. And this was no accident. It's the direct result of a really forward-thinking policy from 2007 called Plan Sable, which gave a laptop to every single kid in primary school, creating a whole generation of digital natives.
Now this is where the big gamble really starts to make sense. Underpinning this whole economic pivot is an energy revolution. Uruguay has already decarbonized its electrical grid. A staggering 98% of its power comes from renewables, wind, solar, you name it. And this incredible green foundation is what makes the next step possible.
And here's that next step, a $6 billion investment from a company called Hife Global. This is by far the largest single investment in the country's entire history, and it's all going into one single plant to make synthetic fuels using all that clean energy. So you're probably wondering, how on earth does that work?
Well, they call it liquid wind, which is a pretty cool name. And here's the recipe. Step 1, you use all that abundant wind and sun to generate tons of clean electricity. Step 2, you use that power to split water molecules into oxygen and green hydrogen. Step 3, you capture CO2 from existing biological sources, so you're not adding new carbon to the air. And then the final step, you combine that green hydrogen and that captured CO2 to create synthetic gasoline, a clean fuel you can put in a regular car and ship anywhere in the world.
So all of this brings us to right now. We have a stable democracy, a new government walking that political tightrope, and a massive green energy bet that could change absolutely everything. Uruguay today is truly at a crossroads.
So what happens next? Well, you can kind of see three potential paths forward. The most likely is just pragmatic success. The government negotiates, the economy keeps growing, and these green projects get off the ground. But there's always the risk of gridlock, right? Where politics just stalls everything. And then there's the dream scenario, the green leap. That's where the hydrogen bet pays off bigger and faster than anyone expects, transforming Uruguay into a global energy leader.
And this really is the whole point. Uruguay started its life as a buffer state, a cushion between its bigger neighbors. But today, it's turning into a laboratory state. It's becoming a real-world testing ground for some of the biggest ideas we're all grappling with. The green energy transition, digital rights, progressive policies, all on a manageable, human scale. And that, right there, is what makes this small nation one of the most important and fascinating places to watch in the world right now.